welcome to our podcast, The Ups and Downs of a Small Business Owner, where we hope to show you exactly what it's like to grow a business. So I'm here today with Marion Ellis, surveyor, business owner, coach, member of Rick's Council, ambassador for Lionheart, B1G1 Global Partner, ADHD, advocate for equal opportunities for women in surveying, and someone who's just incredibly open and honest. Hello, Marion.
Hello, that's an introduction. You've been reading my LinkedIn line.
How would you describe yourself?
Good question. I'm a chartered surveyor first,
Yeah.
with a background in defects and valuation claims on the residential side, and I now coach surveyors in business and all things surveying because
You love surveying even now?
I do, yeah. I mean, I go through phases, like any profession or area of work, you can get very frustrated and downbeat about things, seen as sort of very techy bods, a bit geeky, a bit boring, but I love that too. So, yeah, no, I do enjoy it.
See what I did miss off that list? TikToker. Is that the name?
TikToker.
I don't even know what they're called.
Yeah, which is really a bizarre place to find yourself in. I mean, when I'm 47, 48 soon, and when I think about, when I was younger, my career and how I thought it might pan out, absolutely no way did I think I would be on TikTok. I would have a podcast. I would be coaching people. I would have a huge community of surveyors. Absolutely not. In part my own confidence, but also it wasn't sort of quite the done thing.
No.
Appreciate I'm old and we hadn't invented TikTok in our heads back then.
It wasn't even internet.
But it's the whole dial-up. But yeah, so yeah, I never thought it would be like that. But also I've been very intuitively led, I think, in the past, probably the last 10 years, to really notice what's going well, what I enjoy, focus more on that, and it's just led me to where I am.
Okay.
But sometimes it takes the confidence to do that, and sometimes you can't do that when you're a bit younger because you just not go.
You don't really know what you like and what you don't like, do you?
No.
So what was going to be the plan then? So when you first started your career in surveying, how did you think it was going to go?
Well, that's really interesting. So I never wanted to be a surveyor.
A bit like me, I never wanted to be an accountant. Yeah.
I did a degree in estate management, and then I did a graduate scheme with a large construction firm, Lang, in Lang Homes, their department, and I moved around the country. So I did everything from on-site house bills, commercials, counting bricks, cost of bricks, all the way through to buying land, sales and marketing. And that was really, really good grounding for construction and property. And I left that firm, but I'd always kept up my RICS, Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, CPD log, because you have to get so much experience before you can then apply for your assessment of professional competence. And I just needed, according to my calculations at the time, 3 months worth of valuation experience. And so I joined a surveying firm to get that and ended up staying there for 15 years. I remember being at university thinking, I don't want a job working, down the A3 corridor in Surrey where all the house prices are really high. And that's what I ended up doing. Yeah. I remember I don't want to be working, getting sued or dealing with plaints and claims. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. So it was almost, the more I said, I don't want to do something, and I found myself there.
So you just sort of drifted there. It wasn't a conscious decision to go into, move area into that.
Yeah, it was almost a lack of other ideas or opportunities. Okay. And it's just where you find yourself. So some parts of my job in my early career I really didn't like and found quite stressful. Now I'm much more, I'll do something because I enjoy it. But maybe that comes with privilege and age. As you get older and realise the more important things in life. Really, when I was younger, it was about having a job, paying the mortgage, and doing what you needed to do.
Yeah, yeah. So today you own Love Surveying Limited. How have you built that brand?
So when I left my corporate job, I literally thought I had no career. I didn't think I was a surveyor anymore, and I was probably quite low. I thought I'd stay at home and be a stay-at-home mum.
So was that a personal choice? You decided that actually you were done with corporate life?
Yeah, it was a difficult leave. Sometimes you get to a point in your career where your values don't align with the place. I was quite burnt out. I had my second daughter was 2.5, something like that. And, just got to that burnout stage. And I hate that because for women, that's such a stereotypical rite of passage. I now know it was menopause, ADHD, and the environment that I was in just wasn't supporting me. So it was a mix of things. But I came out of that and thought, am I a surveyor or not? Because I'd become so far removed from technical part of the job.
Yeah.
Of going out and inspecting properties, because I was dealing with complaints and claims, that I was probably more closer to law or managing people, that kind of thing. And I had some garden leave and some time off. I did a project. I'd had some mentoring that I'd paid for separately a few years before, and I was supposed to do a leadership project that wasn't work related. And the idea was that, you're a leader and you can do these things outside of work, therefore you can do it in work, I think was the background. But I couldn't think of an idea at the time. And so whilst I was off, I did a Women in Surveying virtual summit where I chatted to different women about their careers. And I'd never used Zoom on video, I'd never interviewed anyone, didn't have a Twitter account, didn't know how to do MailChimp and the email and all those things.
Yes.
But it kept me busy and I really enjoyed it.
Because you felt there was a need to create this community of women.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found that, I went to an event a few months before I left my job, and there was it was a big round table, and there was 8 female surveyors, which is rare. At the time, there's about 14% women who were surveyors. Now it's only about 18, 19%. Quite a lot has been done, but still, that was 4 or 5 years ago. And out of the 8 of us sat around the table, 9 with me, half of them had signed an NDA for discrimination in some kind of way. And, I left my role. It was my employment. It was difficult. But I just thought, as we started to talk, there's nowhere ranged from just starting out to all the way through to, well, I'm not dead yet.
Yeah.
And I'm hanging on here.
Yeah.
And it was like the life cycle of a female surveyor. And so what I needed at the time was female support, and I didn't have it. So I did this project, and it created it. And it was quite a powerful thing at the time because there is no women's group in the surveying profession. There are in others, and there are different reasons and why. But it was for me, it was something that I needed. And so I just created that support. And it did help because some of those women picked me up off the floor. One of them told me and said, right, you can have my job teaching valuation because I'm doing something else. And I started to build my confidence. And I think the year after 2019, I applied for my fellowship. And that was a journey of, am I a surveyor anymore? But as I went through that, I realised, because it's a submission, you've got to demonstrate we've got a royal charter because we act in the public advantage. So we had to demonstrate all of these things. And I realised that this is the kind of surveyor I am. Now, I'm not the surveyor that goes out and inspects buildings and does valuations. And this is how I do it. And so I gained that confidence. And at the time I was then running a small company, Blue Box Partners. And obviously then, we hit COVID and all of those things. And I didn't really want to run a training company. And I'd found myself in a position where I was wearing different hats, the women in surveying, complaints and claims, the coaching. But the thing that pulled it all together was just that I love surveying. And so that's what it it became.
Yeah.
And I suppose in many ways, I'm an ambassador for a profession, but I just find it really interesting, the human element of having a really technical job and the stresses that come with that and the consequences. And then, the people behind it. And if you don't look after yourself, don't support yourself, then you can't do your job to your best of ability. So it came out of, I suppose, need for me to belong somewhere in the kind of surveyor that I am, but also that it's okay to love your job, all the geekiness and that comes with it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what I talk about, I guess.
So from a client point of view, did they not realise they needed that support, or do you think they've always wanted that support but it's just never been available?
Well, it's interesting because, most of the profession are men. Men do not talk about mental health in the same way women do. So as women, we tend to go from, we struggle and get burnout, but we're wired to tend and befriend, and there's little networks somewhere in whatever shape or form. Whereas men don't. They don't talk about things, and then there are obviously very dire consequences to that, which is always a shock and a surprise to people. So the more I trained as a women's leadership coach, because the more I talked about some of my challenges, the more women came to me with their bag of worries. And whilst I was able to wanted to help them, I also had to protect myself.
Yes.
What do you do?
It's a lot for you to carry around.
Yeah, exactly. And I absorb a lot of it. So, but the more I talked about not so much work-life balance, but work-life integration and all those sort of well-being things in the context of the work we do, the more it resonated with men, I noticed. Okay. And that they don't have an outlet to talk about some of these things. So it really sort of evolved into being able to embrace who you are, the kind of work that you do, and sort of grew from there, really.
So it's probably feeds on, actually, but how important have the people around you been to your personal and business journey?
Oh, huge. Where you have the most support in life is where you have the most success. Nobody becomes the CEO of a business without, mentors, sponsors, coaching in some way, that support that lifts you up. Absolutely. What's really hard, I think, is working out the support that you need. And particularly when you work for yourself, you start off with, well, I'm going to do everything because I can't afford, it all becomes about the money. I can't afford the support. Yeah. And I've had lots of different types of support. Someone comes up with a good idea and you think, yes, that's what I need. And then you waste money. The amount of money you can waste on finding the right support is really hard. But it's almost like a rite of passage. You've got to work out what you need,
the types of people that you can work with.
Yeah, the types of people. You also learn more about yourself, and what you need and the way that you work. And I've learned that I need someone to help me get up the first couple of steps so that I can then learn and experiment. So it's things like, rather than do a 10-week course, I'm better off paying for a couple of hours of an expert telling me or showing me how to get to somewhere.
Yeah.
I can play an experiment, and then I can help and outsource it to somebody who will create stuff, and then I just go and give it a bit of polish. Right. So it's a different way, and I can't not know about any of the tech I use or systems and processes, but I need someone to help me get to that point, and accountability to make sure things are done. But you can have all sorts, but it's not, just admin in your business. It's people to reach out to with technical queries and home life as well. It's really important to have that support at home. But then, my husband isn't the best person at advising me and supporting me as a small business because he doesn't have a small business. Right. He works for a big corporate. Yeah. So it's recognizing the different types of support, but also that can come in different ways in terms of people. But even things like this podcast, if someone, is interested or wants, a bit of context, podcasts, articles, all those things are supportive. Just like you probably know a friend who can help you run a marathon if you so wanted to. There's always somebody who's the tech geek or the fitness geek or whatever. So it's different people for different tasks, but also different levels of support. Yeah. And the more you've got of that, the more it can feel like a trampoline and a safety net to do what you need to do.
And like a virtual team, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
if you're just doing it yourself, that's really hard, isn't it? To try and, because sometimes you might have an idea of what you want to do, but you have no idea how to do it.
Sometimes you don't know what's possible.
Yeah.
And you see you then put pressure on yourself of, oh, this is what it should look like.
Yeah.
You know, so a good example, when you're starting out, everybody thinks they need to have a website. You can spend lots of money on a website. When really, if you have experience and you're sort of known for what you do, a really good LinkedIn profile and a Google business profile, and you can have a little website off that Google business profile, gets you ready for day one.
Yes.
Until you've got a bit of money.
Yeah.
You know, so it's those rabbit holes that you can go down thinking about what you think your shop front should look like.
Yes.
Can really...
Because it evolves as well. You know,
It
what
does.
you initially think your business is going to be is very rarely what it actually ends up being.
Oh, it does. I mean, my first business, as you know, was the same business. It's just me, but it was called Inspiring Customer Experience. Because I'd done all of this and claims and really passionate about customer experience and the difference it can make. And that was just what I felt like doing at the time. And then it evolved to Marion Ellis, because that's me. And now it's Love Surveying, because that's the thing I do now. Yeah. And that's just okay. It's just who you are and where you're at.
Yeah, you know? And it's just part of your journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know, and how you've evolved and worked out what you enjoy doing and what works for you.
Yeah, certainly.
So what's been your biggest failure and what have you learned?
Oh, there's loads of failures in terms of business. Money.
Business.
Oh, that's a hard one. You have to edit this bit to stop the chorus.
It will come out.
I think, I don't know, I find that really hard to answer because I fail all the time at lots of things. And I've got ADHD, which I was diagnosed with in the last year. And so there are loads of incidents through my life where I could have made different decisions. I made the wrong decision. Some of that's, financial decisions.
Yeah.
When I was in my 20s, I was nearly £25,000 in debt.
Right.
And that was just literally, it started off with a loan with Abbey National for something, and then just escalated because at the time I didn't have the skills or education to earn enough money to pay it off.
Yeah.
When I qualified as a surveyor, I had it sorted within a year and had loads of money the year after. So, sometimes it's just not one big decision. What I look back and realise it's lack of education. In school we're not taught about money.
No.
Just like as a surveyor, residential surveyor, we're not taught about how to maintain homes.
Right.
How to live in homes, which sounds daft.
Yes.
But we're not. Education's really important in its power, and the more that you know, the more that you can empower yourself. When I think about failure, rather than putting the pressure on myself to make the right decision, I just make the next decision. It's just the next thing.
Yeah, and it's how you frame that failure. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it might be catastrophic, but it's more about, okay, that happened. I've learned something from that. What do I now do that's a bit different to make sure that doesn't happen again?
One of the things that has really made a difference to me over the last 6 or 7 years is I've given myself 18 months, which has lasted 6 years, 18 months of being curious.
Okay.
What would it look like if I tried this? How will I know that that's working and if I've enjoyed it and it's worth it? And, curiosity is another word for creativity.
Yes.
And as a technical surveyor dealing with some really horrible stuff at times, there was no outlet for me to be creative whatsoever. It might be changing my wallpaper at home and a bit of cushions. Drawing with the kids was probably as creative as I thought I could be.
Okay.
But being curious, thinking, I wonder, what would that be like? Really has opened everything up. So when I look at failure, it's actually created opportunities and insights. And I know more of who I do and don't want to work with and the kind of work that I do and don't want to do. That's really, really helped.
I'd say probably a lot of business owners are curious, aren't they? Yeah, that's part of the mindset, I think.
Well,
But
we always talk
kind of-
about entrepreneurs, you know,
Yeah.
being like, was it Stephen Bartlett and Dragon's Den and coming up with great ideas.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you asked me to come up with a name for a business,
Yeah.
or I cannot do it.
Okay.
I used to have a job years ago when I worked for the house builder to come up with street names.
Oh.
And that you apply to, you know, that you send to the council. Do you think I could come up with like a marketing name for a new build? Absolutely. Oh,
I didn't realise that's what actually happened. Is that someone's job to come up with street
Yeah,
names?
so you have, well, might be slightly different now. Then it depends on the council, but you'd have a marketing name for the development, and then you submit some names to the council, and they would either have some and suggest it, and it's usually named after some councillor or what was on the site before, and so you have a marketing name which sounds great, and then the actual real name is horrible. You know, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
But I struggled with creativity, and unless I was really in the mood to do any of that. And I remember going into work one day towards the end of my corporate job. I was in a foul mood. I just thought, right, I'm not going to speak to anybody. You know, I'm only going to speak to people I like. And obviously that makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at my computer screen. It was blue. The diary was blue, full of appointments. And I hate the colour pale blue.
Right.
And so I changed it. I colour-coded it. And then I went random. And the secretaries were like, geez, I like it. And then I remember popping out at lunchtime to the IKEA because they do really good felt pens.
Yeah.
And I colour-coded and felt penned, you know, everything. And it was just a way of expressing myself through really, really technical work. And that was sort of part of the start of the change that I've had in my career over the last few years. You know, doing a podcast, let's just give it a go. How hard can it be? You know, TikTok was really just, I mean, only a few months ago, like 6 months ago, I started that. And it was just a way of just getting some frustration out and, you know, expressing yourself. I never thought I would do any of that.
No, I think that's amazing because you're just putting yourself out there though, aren't you? And you don't quite know, especially in the early days, you must have thought, gosh, I don't really know how this is going to.
That I did. Hi, I'm Marion from Customer Experience. Yeah, and even when I did this Women in Surveying Summit, it was, I felt like Lorraine Kelly on the sofa because I thought that's how I had to be.
Okay.
And you don't go from having never done anything to, podcasts and TikTok and all of those things.
No.
You have to go through the pain barrier, but the more you embrace it and the more you embrace who you are and understand yourself better, it's the greatest grounding, not just for how you show up visibly, but also in your business. And one of the great things I learned, I did a course, many courses and things I've signed up to over the years. And it was a guy who talked about presenting. He called it the art of presenting. And he talked about when you go to present, we talk about being in the performance zone. Mm-hmm. And you may have come across the Amy Cuddy TED talk about hands on hips and empowering yourself. And yes, be that person. Yeah. But what he talked about and gave his story, he went to go on stage and he'd slipped in the bath the day before or that morning and basically turned up, stood on stage and was a mess. Yeah. And sometimes you've got to embrace that. Mm. And about the same time, I remember seeing a surveyor, senior surveyor who worked for a bank at the time at a big event, and he gave the worst presentation I have ever come across in my life. I mean, even thinking about it now, it makes me feel so sick for him. You know, he was nervous. It wasn't articulate. But he then had the Q&A questions after it. Yeah. And people were asking him questions, trying to help him get this information out. Okay. And somebody, made a snipey remark. And he said, look, I have never stood in front of an audience of 150 people. And I'm sharing with you some tough stuff, some difficult stuff. Yeah. But I'm doing it because you need to know, putting myself through it. And, it all clicked into place. Okay. And so this guy who showed up on stage and talked about, the mishaps that he had. And then this other guy presenting, and we think, well, sometimes you just need to show up and say, I've never presented before.
Yeah.
Or actually, I'm having a really bad day. Sometimes you just got to acknowledge where you're at.
Yes.
And then you can move on and you take the audience with you.
Yeah.
And that taught me a good lesson, because sometimes I can do the hands on hips, but sometimes I'm tired. I've had a bad day, not sure what's going to come out.
Yeah.
And when you embrace who you are, it's a lot easier then to get to the point of what you want to say and what you're presenting. But it's also really authentic, very human.
Yes, that's what I was
relatable to people.
Yeah, so people probably actually respond better to your down moments than actually when you are this completely polished presenter on stage.
Yeah,
because they can identify with them.
Yeah, and anything else you do, you exceed their expectations of it. And often I'll put a post out on LinkedIn and it's got a spelling mistake on it, or something's not quite right, and it is hard, don't get me wrong, but I have a lot more compassion for myself these days than I did when I was younger.
Yeah. So is that your biggest success, do you think? The things that because almost you've overcome mental barriers, haven't you? You've kept pushing, even outside your comfort zone, thinking that, this will be beneficial for other people. It will help me grow. Is that?
I think my biggest success is finding myself in a position where I do what I love. And that sounds really cheesy and inspirational. But I'm in a position where I mostly feel comfortable because I know myself better.
Yeah.
And that does come with maturity and, life and business experience. But I feel like I'm in a zone of doing what I was born to do, I suppose, in the nicest way.
Yeah. And also you choose who you work with.
I choose, yeah, absolutely. You learn, I can't work with someone whose values don't align.
No.
They've got to thinking about a meaningful, life-friendly business and want help. If they just want to, if I'm invited to speak at a corporate event and I don't think the corporate's very good, I can say no, I can't do it.
Yeah.
If there's someone who just literally wants to grow their business in terms of money, no, that's just not for me. I can show you how to do it, but actually I don't want to.
No, okay.
So knowing yourself better means you get to make those decisions. But then there's other things I'm proud of, and I'll come to what is success.
Yeah.
The Women in Surveying Summit I mentioned, in that year, when I went through my fellowship, in that year I set up a little group of other women, and we all got our fellowships, and that was the most number of women who'd become fellows in 150 odd years of the RICS. I've got a Surveyor Hub community on Facebook, which has thousands of people in. I've got a podcast that's had over 100,000 downloads of me chatting to, with random people about random things. And you can measure the success by numbers. You can measure the success of the impact that's had on people. Or you measure the success of the amount of pounds in your bank account. All of it, is a different measure. And some days I feel like, well, success is money in the bank. And other days I feel like success is helping someone else and getting that nice little bit of feedback. But I think overall it's being in that position where I've got all of that.
Yeah, choice. Yeah. So when you left your corporate job, you said you were quite burnt out at that stage. You had young children as well, didn't you? So how does that feel now? What's the balance like between your work, achieving what you want to achieve, helping other people in the profession, but also maintaining a home life that you're present for?
So what's been interesting since then is being diagnosed with ADHD. I'm no expert on it. And everybody's experience is different, so I can only share what I've learned so far. In terms of, the whole burnout piece, a lot of people with ADHD get to a point where they're exhausted because they're so focused on doing something that they forget to look after themselves properly, or they have a lot of sense of injustice and we've got to save everybody. In the past I found it really hard to watch some adverts. I remember crying at B&Q advert for a kitchen years ago because some woman was happy she got a kitchen. we're quite empathic, and we absorb everybody's worries and wanting to fix. And so that can be really, really draining. Similarly, I am really creative and brave because of my ADHD, but we mask an awful lot of things. And I was in an environment where there was lots of structure, routine, a nice framework, which supported me to a point until I didn't become interested in it anymore. And that's when it all became hard. So, looking at that, looking at my ADHD now is it's medication. If, people choose to do that or not. I happen to. It's then looking at your support.
Yeah.
And we talked about support in your business. And for me, working by myself is quite hard, and I need to be able to talk to people about what I'm doing, and sounding boards and those things. And then also your well-being. If I am tired, it doesn't help. If I've not eaten properly, or if I've not had time outside, rather than just being in all day, my environment where I work is really, really important. But it's also about those dopamine hits of doing things that are exciting, which is why I do the TikTok stuff, just because I can. It's a bit of an outlet, and then I might go and do some serious stuff.
Yeah.
So it's making sure you've got that.
So you consciously almost have like a checklist to make sure that you're covering off.
Well,
every area,
you'd think that, but I'm not that organised. But effectively, yes, you need to look at what are your needs. What do you need to be okay? And the first place to always start is your well-being, because you know that you should know when you're tired, your view on your business finances, or whether you're getting clients in or not. You'll feel depressed, or you might feel motivated to go and sort these things out. So it's all got to start with your well-being. But being sounds a bit,
it's a really big term now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And same as sort of burnout. But I think if you can look at all the things that you need to be okay, which could be chatting to other people, seeing friends, listening to some music.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was a surveyor. One of the things I used to do when I was driving around managing my appointments, I would listen to Joe Wiley's Radio 1 Live Lounge and rearrange my appointments around it, because that was a highlight of my day.
Okay.
When I went to work in a corporate office, didn't listen to anything. Now, when I'm doing certain types of work, I'll just put Spotify on, or the radio or whatever.
Still Radio 1?
It's moved over to Radio 2, hasn't it? It's just... No, I'm not. Yeah, no. Actually,
Go through the numbers as you get older.
What I do now is, especially if I'm in the car, I'll just flick through the channels, and got like absolute 80s, 90s in it, and I just flick through and sit and see what's on.
Yeah.
So
So what's one thing your business did that you didn't expect?
I think that it would resonate with people, owning being a surveyor and being okay with that. So, we do technical jobs. I think the example of a residential surveyor, they'll be going out doing mortgage valuations, home buyers, building surveys. And when you walk into someone's home, you walk into their life, warts and all. And sometimes they're nice, but mostly they're not that nice. You're looking at the technical construction of a building, you're lifting drains and seeing some awful things. Yeah. And you come out and you've got to process that. Yes, you've got to write a technical report, but you also have to emotionally process that. If you think about, as humans, our senses are so highly developed.
Yes.
When we're going in and out of these buildings and dealing with different situations, it's actually quite a social, sensory experience, put it that way. And sometimes you'll see things that are just ridiculous, but nobody else but you or a surveyor would know that, in terms of repairs, or the ways that people have altered buildings, or the real sort of inside joke. And so with the podcast and certainly the Facebook group, that's the thing that really resonated with people, and it's about that sense of community but connection. And it started when I first noticed this, or first realised and tuned into it, because I knew it was missing, but I couldn't have articulated that to you in any way. Somebody had been into a house, done a survey, and they'd taken a picture of this black and white fat cat on a sofa. and it was sat positioned next to a remote control as if it was sat watching telly. And surveyor taking this picture and shared it and it's a private group, and shared it and said, "I've been here 3 hours and that cat hasn't moved." I don't know what he's thinking. It's on the telly.
Okay.
And then others commented about things they'd seen and what they'd done. And then somebody posted, "This is so funny. I've had a really rubbish day and it just made me feel much better."
Okay.
And from there, that power to connect with people, and this was before COVID and everything, the power to connect with people on a level that we resonate with. And I'm sure, there's some kind of, accountants
jokes group. I'm not sure, Marion, but
no, but probably, and it's things like that that resonate. And I didn't realize that was possible, or that it could be done in a fun way.
Yes.
And now some of the TikTok videos I do, sometimes they're just taking the mick out of surveyors. So there's one that I did where the guy at Gladiator, he says, "I am Maximus Decimus." I can't remember what his name is.
Yeah. Oh, Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe, that's the one.
Yeah.
It's a very famous thing. And I do that, talking to, "How dare you challenge me with a down valuation on a property?"
You're not dressed like a gladiator.
No, I'm in my kitchen. And I did one recently, which I quite enjoyed, Billy Ocean. "Red light spells danger," which is like the traffic lights on a home buyer report.
Okay.
And now I'm just able to tune into different things and see a surveyor-related funny side to it.
So have any other surveyors kind of responded to that and started doing their own take on that?
No.
They're just happy to watch you.
They're thinking, "Yeah, she's nuts." But I guess they've got to. My business is different to theirs.
Yes.
They're dealing with the public.
Okay.
There are some surveyors who do Instagram reels and things, and we need to be visible. We need to be out there. Yeah. But what they might be sharing it needs to resonate with their clients, whereas I'm sharing something that resonates with surveyors.
Yeah.
And it's being able to connect with your client ultimately. But surveyors are a lot of them are neurodiverse, I'm pretty sure. But they're also very reserved, like to keep their head down, worry about social media, how we're seen professionally. And I suppose in many ways I've broken a mold of you can be professional and on TikTok doing fun stuff. But it's all got to be in context. I talk about fun stuff, but I also have some hard-hitting views as well, whether people agree with them or not. And it's using that platform to make influence and help other people, encourage them to do differently. And I tend to start with my clients to encourage them to use LinkedIn, because that's the seen as the professional network. Yeah. But it's scary for people to even post on there. Yeah. You've got to learn, how do you post? How do you engage with people? Yeah. How do you make it relatable? And I've learned that over the last 5 years, I guess, which is why I couldn't go from 0 to doing videos. Yeah. You have to go through that. And it's part of that knowing more about yourself. So me connecting with surveyors on something funny and relatable, showing my mistakes. Yes. And, I've got to that point and it relates to them. Yeah.
But equally, there's a downside.
Hugely.
So for being so visible, actually not all the feedback is great.
No, and it's interesting with we can criticize social media all we want. We know some of the problems, but when you are different and you're doing something different, I'm a female in a male dominated profession, and I hate saying that term. One day I won't have to. Yeah, and I'm confident in myself. Some people don't like a confident woman with opinions that might, disrupt. But if I don't do it, then what does that show to other women or other surveyors of that they're not deserving of it? So I think it's important that we all act as role models. But it's interesting the negativity that you get. So when I started my visibility journey, if we call it that, I thought I might get people trolling, commenting, saying, "Oh, isn't she ugly and being stupid?" and those kind of things. Right. But it wasn't at all. Actually, I've been criticised professionally Do people think am I actually a proper surveyor? I've been called a racist.
So is that harder, actually? You thought it would be sort of more physical differences.
Yeah.
But to have someone criticise your
professional integrity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who does she think she is?
Yeah.
Like I'm a show off. And some of all of it hurts. Some people have different opinions. I'm good with different opinions, but you've got to be constructive, and I should be allowed to share mine. And guess what? You don't have to follow me.
Yes.
Is the thing.
Yeah.
But
have to comment.
Yeah, but there's been a couple of things over the certainly last 18 months which have been quite hard. Firstly, because I didn't expect to have those comments and things on LinkedIn. It's a professional network. I know who you are, and so does everybody else. But also then, how do you tackle that?
Yeah.
Who do you report it to? What action do they take?
Yeah.
That then becomes harder. And just recently, somebody I had some challenges with who would jump on every single post and complain about all sorts of other things, not just me. Yeah. LinkedIn have taken them off, but it's taken a while to do that. But also in another platform I asked a question about PI insurance for surveyors, and I was looking for contact.
Yeah.
And another surveyor who'd been a surveyor for 31 years saw my name, profile, went onto my website, went onto Company's House, saw that last year my business didn't make a profit, and went and put a nice little piece on saying, I don't know who this Marion Ellis thinks she is. She's advising businesses. She's doing this, that, and the other. This is highly inappropriate. And that is just, how entitled does someone think they are to do that? And why would you do that on it was a closed platform, but it was still a professional network platform.
Yeah.
And would they have done that to a man?
Yes.
And I responded, because how do you respond to something like that? You can either report the comments and get things taken down.
Yeah.
But what I've learned with running a community is if you don't show a response, again, and it's not about getting into a battle, but if you don't show a response, then you're not showing that you've the power, who's that with?
Yeah.
And I responded actually with an explanation. Clearly, you don't know how, companies and money works.
Yeah.
You don't know anything about my circumstances and the fact that I'd sold a business the year before, and this year actually I'd invested a lot in certain things.
Yes.
And the year after would be different.
Yeah.
And also in one of my roles until that point, I'd been involved on a governing council at RICS. And so I think a lot of people have got confused with me as an individual and my business, and then the problems and woes of a whole 154-year-old institution. And so I give some explanation of, hang on, that's not fair. And then he responded with, the lady does assess too much. And you just think, at some point you can't win with people.
No.
And eventually that was taken down by the platform. But
how does that make you feel? Like you can deal with it. You can put responses on. How does it actually make you feel?
It's your worst. Actually, that was really bad. Actually, it was your worst fear.
Yeah.
Of we don't always feel confident as business owners.
Yeah.
And somebody has just pointed it out. My numbers.
Yes.
That aren't great, and it's that measure of success.
Yes.
And clearly money is important. It's got to be a success measure, because you've got to pay your mortgage, roof over your head, and those things. Otherwise you don't have a business, you have an expensive hobby. But for somebody to point those things out, it then gets you into that whole imposter spiral things. And for me, it came on the back of lots of other criticism for daring to be a woman with an opinion and doing things differently.
So did it make you think, actually, I think I might just hold back now? I don't want to be so out there. I don't want to experience this again.
Made me feel like a failure of, I'm a coach. I support surveyors in the context of business. I work with a particular niche of surveyors who are a couple of years in business. Yeah. I consult and do different things. But I'm not there to help them make a detailed financial plan, business mentor style. I'm more of a sounding board. I know who I am and who I help and who I don't and can't. And I always signpost people so that when they've finished working with me, they know who to go to next, because we're all on a journey. But that felt really humiliating. It felt quite, I felt like a failure because your numbers are on show. And it's interesting. Have you ever seen, these programs where people go back to the shop floor or back to the poor council estate where they lived?
Yeah, undercover boss.
Undercover, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered this because I grew up in a quite tough council estate up in North Wales. And, my life now and business, you'd think I was a success, compared to that.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm not a multimillionaire. But when I see these programs, thinking people going back and you find out their story of how they were motivated and they made a success of themselves.
Yeah.
I could never do that. And you just think actually it's quite emotional to go back and do those things. And it's a lot about money mindset.
So you couldn't go back to where you were brought up.
It's really hard to go back and reflect on my attitudes to money, and where I'm at now. And I think, well, if I was the same person, or in that situation, how have they made multi-million pounds? And I didn't have that in my head. It would never occur to me. If I had money, I would spend it because otherwise it would go. Whereas other people have money and they maximize it and they save it. And that's that whole education piece of understanding the power of not just money, but knowledge and education, and I didn't have that support. And that's what I guess I've learned later in life. And it's also values and other things. And so getting this sort of feedback of, who do you think she is in business? I found myself thinking, okay, well, is this going to motivate me to do better? Because how dare he? Or is it going to make me shrivel up and close my business down?
Yeah.
And I flitted sort of between the two.
Yeah.
Until I got to a point of, well, I can't ignore what I've just experienced and heard and what someone said and done. I know I'm on a path and I know I've got a plan and I know where I'm working to.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick with what I know and trust my gut instincts with where I'm at. And when you have things like that, and it's the same with any comments you get on LinkedIn or whatever, is what you notice when nobody else defends you. Or no one else says, hey, that's a bit off.
It's almost,
and that's almost worse. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually just want someone to support them and have their back publicly. Because I know privately you get lots of support and lots of really positive
I do.
feedback.
And I've got some great clients and there's some good stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
And so I feel quite good about my work, what I do.
Yes.
Yes, I experiment and do lots of things, and you are where you are with life, and my kids are still, school age, and it'll be, be what it'll be. But yeah, it's really hard when you get that and you sort of checking, well, how am I going to react to that, and what do other people think? And you've just, unless you've got a clear something somebody is saying about you, or you've got your own sounding board of, someone said, Marion, actually, I think you were right off topic there.
Yeah.
You've got to have that check-in, validate, somewhere.
Yeah.
You've just got to hang on to what is going right.
Yeah.
Notice, how do I know I'm doing well?
Yes.
Because my client's happy, because I can see the difference, that this or that has made to somebody, that I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
And I think that's doubly hard when you're a solo business owner.
Totally.
Because, it's you are the business, and you've got no one there just to support you and say, actually, we're doing this together, and I know you're doing a great job. I'm doing a great job. And it's. But
if I don't feel like I'm doing a great job, it doesn't matter. And this is the thing, I think, with entrepreneurship. I didn't set out to run my own business.
No.
I left my job thinking I'd have no career.
Yes.
And I've never applied for a job because I didn't think anybody would hire me, which is quite sad.
Yes.
Now I know I'm unhireable because I'm total oddball, and I wouldn't fit in. And so collaborating
so you're an oddball.
I'll say it.
You do become unemployable when you run a business.
You do, but you can collaborate, you can consult, you can do different things to feel part of it, or to work with clients. But you're not employable in the traditional sense.
No.
And now I look back now, I'd just outgrown everything.
Yes.
and therefore things weren't working. I'd outgrown my corporate role. I've outgrown different business names and things that I've done.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And it just makes me think now about what I'll grow into.
Exactly. You've got no ceilings now.
But what I struggle with sometimes when you see, Dragon's Den and all these entrepreneurs is that driven, got to do this, and you can get really caught up in what it means to do that. And some people will make multi-million pounds, and other people will have a nice, comfortable business and one that makes them feel good and pays the mortgage. And that's okay too. We're at different levels. We don't have to be all...
No, and it's that success criteria, isn't it? Actually, what is success? And it's different for every person. The same with clients that I work with. Actually, their goals are completely different, but they're all bringing something to them. They wouldn't all be happy to get, not everyone wants to be a multimillionaire. Actually, that isn't the end point, is it?
Well, it would be nice, obviously, but it's the
that's byproduct.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the work you have to do. But what's really hard is all of these people are out there like role models, like the people going back to the council estate or back to the shop floor. This is what I did, and therefore we only ever see one pattern of business, or one way of having a business. And I see this with my surveyors. They might leave a corporate, want to set up on their own. But the only business model they've got in their head is to recruit, expand, get bigger, really be competitive on price. When actually a lot of them can earn more money working for themselves if they chose the right work, and had different income streams. And so that's what I talk to them more about. And that's what actually I'm doing myself in just a slightly different way.
So what would you like to leave behind as your business legacy?
That you can enjoy your business. Your business is a vehicle for whatever you want to do. I often talk about that with my clients, and I'm actually rubbish with cars. So I think to describe what kind of car it is, but it's a vehicle to get you somewhere.
Yes.
And that's, once you know where you're going, you can think about getting from A to B. What we tend to do, if that journey doesn't happen. So say you're going to go on a journey, you plan the map, you know where you're going, you know what time, you've got your snacks. And when you don't get there, you turn around and start to blame. Who didn't fill the car with petrol? Who didn't do this? What went wrong? Look at them on that motorway up there. They're going really fast and I'm on this slow road because I've taken a wrong turn. Whereas ultimately, we're humans, we're not robots. And we don't think in a linear way. So yes, we can have all the checklists in the world. But if we're not thinking about, well, why on earth are we trying to get from A to B? And what is A to B all about? There's nothing that drives you to make sure that you don't forget the things that matter and what's really important. Because actually, it could be the journey and you're taking the scenic route because it's much more beautiful than a, M1. And that's where this sort of purpose and meaning comes into the work that you
and I
work
keep
that you
getting
do.
reminded of that all the time. Actually, enjoy that journey. I think you can be so fixated on the destination that actually you miss all of the great stuff that forms part of that route to get to your goal.
So it's having a minimum income that pays your mortgage and all the stuff that you need to. But then enjoy it. And for me, it is about that curiosity still. And I don't know whether I'll ever get there. I almost feel like is it Star Trek or Lost in Space or wandering around in the woods, I'm just still here, but that's okay. That is okay because you will know when you're there.
Yes.
And just like I've done different things, I'll know when Love Surveying is right to come to an end and I'll do the next thing.
It's about keep moving, isn't it? Just keeping going. And it doesn't really matter if, like you say, you're just sort of wandering around. That's fine, but just don't stay still.
Just in my head there, I've got like having a nice, enjoyable walk or doing like a driven Jane Fonda exercise or power walk or run. I know. But it is that, and if you're finding it's too hard and you're on the hamster treadmill, then there's something not right.
Yes.
And that's either what's going on in your life or it's your business isn't serving you because it's meant to be a comfortable journey. not a hard one. Otherwise, where's the point?
Yeah.
Sounds very philosophical, but there you go.
So to wrap up, what's one question you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have asked it?
Oh, I really don't know.
Good. Does that mean we've covered everything?
Yes, this is where I'm just like, if you ask me to come up with creative names or do stuff, I'm like, no, I don't think so. Yeah, if you did give me like any kind of quiz on, can you tell me what the rate of return is on this or what this tax thing means, I'd have just said, well, you're my accountant. That's what I've got you for. The one thing I would say actually is, and credit to you and the business that you have, is that it makes such a difference having an accountant you can talk to. Massively. You might think that you're delivering therapy for me at times, but it makes a huge, huge difference. And having someone in your business who feels more like the financial support director, whatever size, is huge, massively huge. It's made a huge difference. I know so many surveyors and that I work with or other people, they're scared of their accountant. And even my first accountant that I had, she was horrible, really horrible, and I couldn't ask her anything and I felt stupid, and she was there meant to be for startups. And so that can make a big difference, I think. So
that's the benefit of being able to build your team, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can have specialists in different areas, but they have to be right for you and give you the support that you need, whatever it is.
And that's all part of that, understanding who you need in your business, But yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. It's been such an interesting conversation.
Well, you never know what's going to come out when you speak to
It won't be a TikTok video.
No.
Definitely not.
Maybe I'll dedicate one to you.
Right, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed listening to our podcast, please like and follow, and make sure to tag us on social media.